In this episode, we talk about the Diamond Harbour model touted by TMC MP Abhishek Banerjee in West Bengal. We also talk about the Waqf Amendment Bill 2024, which was tabled in the Parliament yesterday. But first, we talk about the weight loss drug Mounjaro entering the Indian market. Hi, I'm Ichha Sharma, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Last week, pharmaceutical giant Eli Lilly launched a Zepatide marketed as Mounjaro in India. This drug is one of several weight loss medications that have taken the world by storm and is emerging as an alternative to bariatric surgery for obesity treatment. Mounjaro will be available in a single-dose vial and must be taken as a weekly shot. Now, to discuss how this drug works, who it could benefit, and its potential side effects, my colleague Shashank Bhargava speaks with the Indian Express's Anonna Dutt, who writes on health for the newspaper.
Anonna, when we talk about these weight loss drugs, Ozempic or semaglutide is perhaps the most famous one. In fact, it has even become a common term for these new medicines. But tell us, how different is Mounjaro from it?
So, all of these drugs belong to a new class of medicines called incretin mimetics, which mimic the action of some gut hormones. And it works in a couple of ways. So, it improves the secretion of insulin, which can remove glucose from the blood. It also inhibits the secretion of glucagon, which stimulates glucose production in the liver. And it also slows down the digestion. So, therefore, the insulin spike is not sudden. It happens gradually over time. These drugs, now we are finding that it also impact the reward pathways in the brain. So they sort of, steer you away from these high carb, high fat, salt, sugary foods, which are quite addictive actually.
Oh, so you're saying that like every time I eat cake, I feel good because there's a reward mechanism in my brain, and these drugs help block that feeling?
Yeah, it's good for alcohol addiction, tobacco addiction. I mean, in general, any kind of addiction, because this changes the reward pathway. So essentially, what scientists are realizing more and more is these processed foods are addictive foods. It leads to food addiction, and these drugs sort of help in changing that reward pathway. And so you're not craving these very, calorie-dense foods. You're much more likely to prefer salads, vegetables, fresh foods. And the other thing that is different about Mounjaro is that it has two targets instead of one. So when it comes to semaglutide, it just works on GLP-1 receptors. But Mounjaro, which is tirzepatide, also works on GIP, which is another gut hormone that it acts on. So it's much more effective than semaglutide because of the two targets.
And we understand that initially these drugs were meant for people with diabetes, but is that not the case anymore?
So, yes, these started off as diabetes drugs, and there have been other GLP-1 receptor agonists before semaglutide as well. But semaglutide led to a huge weight loss. And that's when these companies realized the potential for these drugs as not just diabetes medicines, but also obesity medicines. And they started getting approved in higher doses. So for diabetes, you would ideally take a lower dose of the same medicine. But for weight loss, a higher dose is recommended. And the company started seeing incredible effects. It was not just weight loss, and some of the weight loss is almost as much as you would see with a bariatric surgery. But just like bariatric surgery, it also led to improvements in symptoms of other conditions that are linked to obesity. So, for example, diabetes got better, hypertension got better, people, recovered from obstructive sleep apnea, kidney functions improved, heart functions improved. So all of this, the company started noticing that the drugs were having effect on a lot of organ systems in the body.
And talk about the extent to which a drug like Mounjaro actually helps reduce weight.
So if we look at like one of the highest doses of Mounjaro, it has been shown to reduce as much as 25% of the body weight. So someone weighing 100 kilo would become 75 with, I think it's a 72-week result that I'm talking about. But also like even with the lower doses up to like 15% or so, 15-20% of the weight is reduced, which is significant. That's how much you would see with a bariatric surgery as well. But what is important point to note here is that these are drugs that you have to continue to take. So if you stop taking the drug, and trials have shown that once you stop taking the drug, there is a bounce back effect. You start gaining weight again. And although it didn't reach the level at which probably the drugs were started, but it was still like the people did end up gaining the weight once they stopped using the medicine.
And Anonna, earlier if you had to reduce weight, of course there was bariatric surgery for extreme cases, but otherwise you had to rely on dieting and exercise. But now, would you just have to take this drug, or would you still have to supplement that with a change in your diet and exercise?
So these drugs are not magic bullets. You can't just have the drug. So you shouldn't aim to just put on weight and then have the drug and become healthy. That's because these drugs also tend to work much better in people who are doing diet and exercise, just like bariatric surgery. So if someone were to undergo bariatric surgery, the doctors would first recommend that they change their lifestyle, and only once they are consistent with their diet, their exercise, they would undergo bariatric surgery. So even this drug is meant for people who actually have made these lifestyle changes but still have hit a plateau and they just cannot lose that weight. This drug helps them. Secondly, it also helps when somebody is extremely obese. If they lose a little weight, then it's also just much more easier to move around and to exercise more. So it gives that initial push. And it also helps because, like I said, it works on your brain as well. So a lot of people who go on diets experience this yo-yo effect, which is, you're like having a perfect week, perfect month, and suddenly something, you lose the weight, but then your brain goes like, oh no, you're craving this food, or, you start feeling extremely hungry, and then you just go off the rails. And that happens because your body thinks that you're in a famine situation, you are starving, and it pushes you to eat more food. But what that means is that you lose out on your gains. So this medicine also helps in bridging that gap. So it keeps you on your diet, but it cannot help without doing the diet and exercise and doing the work.
And Anonna, now that Mounjaro has been approved in India, tell us, how much does it cost?
So we were told that the drug would cost about 3,500 for a 2.5 mg vial and 4,375 for a 5 mg vial. So that translates to about 14 to 17,000 a month for these doses. But some people may require higher doses, so the cost will go up accordingly.
And since you mentioned that the weight will likely come back once you stop taking these drugs, does that mean that people who are extremely obese, they will just have to continue paying around 14 to 17,000 rupees a month for this?
Yes, that is the challenge here because, like diabetes or hypertension medicines which you take for life, you have to continue taking these medicines to keep the weight off. And yes, 14 to 17,000 is a high price, but what is good is semaglutide will get off patent next year in India. So, which means, generic versions would become available pretty soon. And generic versions would cost ideally much less than this. So that would, of course, help. But yes, you have to continue taking the medicine.
And anything in particular that stood out to you in terms of what led to it being finally approved in India?
So, patients from India were part of the global trials itself. So what we are seeing, these results from the global trials, there are Indian populations within those trials. So, it works. Then our drug regulator actually gave their approval based on these studies. So the approval for at least semaglutide has been in place for a couple of years now, but they never launched in India because they were dealing with like a huge global demand. So I think even Novo Nordisk did not anticipate how popular these drugs would become. So they never launched in India because they weren't able to cater to their existing markets. Eli Lilly also, I think, got the approval probably sometime last year. And now finally they are launching it in India. But I think it was more about the supply side issues that we didn't get it so far.
And we have talked about this in the past, but obesity in India has been rising over the years due to lifestyle changes, due to the kind of food we have been consuming. So tell us, what do these drugs entering the Indian market mean for our population?
So, as we've talked about, yes, diabetes, obesity, all of this is on the rise in India. But what is a challenge in India is the same central obesity. So, yes, we know that these drugs reduce obesity, but we have to look at the impact of these drugs on central obesity, which is very prevalent in India. So in India, you would see people who, by a first look, you won't say that these people are obese or overweight, but they tend to have a lot of fat within their abdomen on the organs, which is what is different from the Caucasian population. So Caucasian populations may, even the obese people there, they would have a lot of subcutaneous fat, which is fat under your skin and not inside your abdomen on the organs. So those two have very different impact on the various diseases that are a consequence of obesity. So we have to see how these impact that visceral fat and abdominal obesity that is prevalent in India. But it is likely to help, because any obesity that goes down with it, you'll feel the consequences also improving. So that would be a very important thing, and we'll see how it works in the coming years.
And the other thing is that ever since these drugs were launched, we have seen a lot of people taking it without a doctor's prescription. And some pharmacies in India have also been selling dubious versions of them. Talk about what doctors say about such use or other misuse of these drugs.
So there is a huge grey market. I mean, there was a huge grey market because these drugs were not available in India, and there were people who wanted it because of this whole, social media campaigns with celebrities coming out and saying that we take Wegovy. There was a lot of demand for it and people were willing to pay for it, but they weren't getting the drug in India. So there were, you could go to other countries and get the shot, or, some drugs were being imported which were not really, say, the semaglutide manufactured by Novo Nordisk, but some other version of it which was available in the grey market. So these drugs were coming into India and there was a huge demand for it. So, a lot of people were taking these medicines, some with consultation with their endocrinologist, some without. We don't know so much about it, but the challenge with any of these drugs is that it has a lot of side effects. It's not a drug which is perfect and you start working. In fact, in the initial 1 month or so, patients tend to experience a lot of vomiting, nausea, and other stomach issues because the drug is acting on the stomach and it takes some getting used to. Then there's also a case to be made for selecting the patients, because some people might have a lot of negative consequences of it. So someone who has a family risk of thyroid cancer should not take it, because this drug has been shown to increase the risk of thyroid cancer. Then it also can lead to pancreatitis, which is the inflammation of the pancreas. Another common side effect that we started seeing once the drugs were rolled out was stomach paralysis. So one of the very common problems with diabetes is that when you have long-term diabetes, it damages your nerves. And in the intestinal tract, what that means is it slows down the action which sort of moves the food through the intestine. And once that is already affected, and if you take this drug on top of that, there is a likelihood that you might get stomach paralysis. So the food doesn't pass very well throughout your system, which is a problem. And so these are like quite serious consequences of the medicine. And the world regulatory bodies are also looking for evidence whether this leads to some suicidal ideation or not, because obesity drugs in the past have led to suicidal ideation and have been withdrawn from the market. So they're keeping an eye out for these side effects as well. So that's why it is not a very good idea to take this without consulting the doctor, because it can have consequences for your other organ systems as well.
And next, we talk about Bengal. Ahead of 2026 West Bengal Assembly elections, the ruling Trinamool Congress has been experiencing internal changes, both in terms of power struggles and implementation of new governance models. And during this period, much of the focus has been on Abhishek Banerjee, the MP from Diamond Harbour and TMC's National General Secretary, whose expanding administrative role and growing political influence have drawn scrutiny from both within his party and the opposition. And at the center of this discussion is one initiative in particular, the Diamond Harbour model.
Abhishek Banerjee is the member of parliament from this constituency. And Abhishek Banerjee is a hands-on approach. We all know that he is also considered as TMC's second in command by many in the party also. So the hands-on approach of this leader has adopted, and he has managed to give an image of his constituency which is different from rest of the constituency. As in, during the pandemic, testing rates in Diamond Harbour were significantly higher than the rest of the state. So when we talk about Diamond Harbour model, there have been a lot of infrastructural development works which other public representatives also do in their constituency. But here, when we have visited Diamond Harbour several times while pursuing for this story, while working on this story, and we found out that people especially like his approach, that whatever he promises, he ensures that it is delivered on time.
That's Sweety Kumari from the Indian Express, who covers Bengal politics. She explains that Diamond Harbour was first promoted as a model for the state during the COVID-19 pandemic. At the time, Abhishek claimed to have ensured 100% vaccination in the constituency, and the positivity rate dropped from 10% to 2%, the lowest in Bengal. Now, over time, Diamond Harbour also saw improvements in its infrastructure, pension drives, and the setup of the Shashank health camps, where people can avail free health services.
So this health camp, which is named as Shashank, which was, organized in Diamond Harbour, Lok Sabha constituency. The idea was to, take free healthcare services to the doorstep of people residing in this constituency. And this health camp was organized for 75 days. And TMC National General Secretary Abhishek Banerjee had claimed that between January 2nd till March 28th, this was the first phase of this initiative, more than 12 lakh people had availed free services at these camps. Now, basically, under this 75 days of Shashank first phase, around 40 to 50 health camps were held. So there are basically 7 assembly constituency which falls under Diamond Harbour. So the idea was for 10 days, each of this assembly constituency organized this health camp. So overall, around 40 to 50 health camps were held for 10 days in each of the 7 assembly constituency. For every 42 health camps, 40 to 42 health camps, there were one model camp. What was this model camp? Model camp was a huge health camp which was, well equipped with great facilities. I would not say that it was at par to a multi-speciality hospital, but yes, a replica of that or a multi-speciality hospital in a smaller way was organized in model camp. So they had doctors' chambers, there were testing room, there were free medicine shops.
These camps were well equipped and took inspiration from Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee's Dware Sarkar scheme. It is these camps, she says, that played a key role in helping Abhishek Banerjee establish a distinct administrative identity.
So the health camp that we are talking about is the latest and most visible aspect of Abhishek Banerjee's much talked about Diamond Harbour model. There are other things, other initiatives done by this MP, which includes, pension camps. So government has a pension scheme for old age people, and around 76,000 people had enrolled through pension camps of Abhishek Banerjee in Diamond Harbour. Fast tracking of government services and mega projects and outreach measures, like there is an outreach measure of Abhishek Banerjee which is named as Act Dake Abhishek. So if you remember, there was an initiative by Chief Minister where Didi Ke Bolo. So basically, if you had any issues, you can call upon a number and get it resolved. It was like that those issues will directly reach to Mamata Banerjee. Similarly, Abhishek launched a scheme which was named as Act Dake Abhishek, through which he wanted to reach out to people and say that Abhishek Banerjee was just a call away.
Now, besides health initiatives and public outreach, Banerjee has also focused on infrastructure through the Diamond Harbour model, the most prominent highlights of which are the Sampriti flyover and the Charial bridge.
It was a long pending demand of the local people there. There is a Sampriti flyover, which is probably the longest flyover in the state. It's stretches for 7.5 kilometers. And it was also, one of the most successful government projects in this constituency. So be it Sampriti flyover, be it Charial bridge, these are, example of projects that are, finished at a pace which is very unusual for government projects. In 2019, if I am not wrong, he had promised the Charial bridge would be ready within 5 years. So during COVID, because of the pandemic, the work was at halt. And Abhishek from Banerjee in a public address had promised that before 2024 Lok Sabha election, he would finish the project. And rightly so, in February 2024, this Charial bridge was inaugurated. And people have been liking his approach of, delivering his promises on time. So there are a lot of initiative which also includes the development of bus terminal, auditorium in Amtala. Then there are water projects in Falta and Mathurapur. So there are a lot of examples of initiatives by Abhishek Banerjee and projects that were, completed at a fast pace, which is very unusual for government projects.
Now, Sweety tells us that apart from this, the model has also focused on several welfare initiatives, including government-organized pension camps. But despite these efforts, the model hasn't been without its critiques. Opposition parties and even voices within the TMC have raised questions about both its optics and legality. They argue that the Subhash Roy camps expose weaknesses in the state's public health infrastructure and allege that government doctors were unofficially deployed for political outreach.
So basically, they have raised question on the infrastructures available in the government hospital. Many claims that during this Subhash Roy health camp, when Abhishek Banerjee was making big claims about this health camp, so opposition was also pointing fingers on why there is a need of a separate health camp by its own party MP, when the TMC claims that their health infrastructure is best in the country. So the opposition claims that it is the failure of the health infrastructure of the state that MPs are forced to, organize health camps. I will also like to talk about this sole non-TMC MLA in South Chobis Pargana district, under which Diamond Harbour fall. So, Nausad Siddiqui, who is ISF MLA from Bhangar, in a conversation with Express, he was saying that, opposition party MLAs projects are delayed for 2 to 3 years, funds are not allotted sometimes. Sometimes the projects get stuck in the name of rules, norms and documents. But for ruling party members, in comparison to, opposition MLAs, works are done or works are commenced even before formal applications are submitted or made. So opposition, some leaders points out that there is clear failure of health infrastructure in the state, and that is why there's a need of health camp. And some claims that it is because TMC on the whole want to push Abhishek Banerjee as second in command of the party, hence his projects are, fast tracked.
Sweety says that there have also been legal concerns around the deployment of government doctors at political camps. When we asked Sweety if any official statement had been made regarding the concern, this is what she said.
No, so there have been no official statements from the party. Neither there have been any formal complaints or applications or letters from the opposition regarding this. However, I would say that, in Subhash Roy, around 1,200 doctors had, volunteered in this health camp. And there were many we spoke to who are government doctors. Some had come voluntarily to, be part of this health camp by taking a casual leave or was part of the health camp on their off days. So there have been questions on how government doctors, despite being on duty, were part of the Subhash Roy. However, whoever we spoke to, they said that it was done voluntarily, and many had, even applied leave and came to be part of this health camp.
Now, with the 2026 Assembly elections approaching, the Diamond Harbour model is becoming more than just a local governance success story. It also appears to be a platform for Abhishek Banerjee's political ascent in the party.
See, first we have to understand, because, this Diamond Harbour model is something that is much touted by Abhishek Banerjee, and he has been trying to portray Diamond Harbour as a model constituency, which is different from rest of the 41 constituency. we have to understand that Trinamool Congress, there have been a lot of rumors of rift between senior leaders and younger leader. As we know that Abhishek Banerjee is a young blood and his approach to things are different to, older politicians of the party. So to say, when we talk about Abhishek Banerjee, he had been trying to create his own political identity since beginning, which is different from just being Mamata Banerjee's nephew. Mamata Banerjee is a seasoned politician. We know that she is orthodox in dealing with some few things, and she is old school politician. Whereas Abhishek Banerjee's approach towards few things are different from rest of the senior party leaders.
Now, during this time, there have also been rumors of a rift between Abhishek Banerjee and the Chief Minister, but he has completely dismissed them.
Recently, there was a mega public address in which Abhishek Banerjee had tried to clear this rumor, saying that he would die but not, form a separate party, and he would always work with Mamata Banerjee, and he was a loyal soldier of this party. So Abhishek Banerjee, by establishing Diamond Harbour as a model constituency, probably his strategy is to establish himself as a strong political identity. So when he is involved into the strategy or policy making of the party, he should have, people should listen to him. And when people say that he is second in command, the responsibility lies on him to prove that with his popularity. So that could be a reason that he is trying to portray Diamond Harbour as a model constituency. As far as how TMC is going to benefit from this, let me tell you that apart from, assuring seats, Diamond Harbour model, once it is popularized that it is different from other constituency, I think strategically it will be easier for people to accept Abhishek Banerjee as the second in command of the party, and he would also be able to, bring in changes in the party, which he has been trying to by, encouraging younger blood in the party.
And in the end, we discussed the introduction of Waqf Amendment Bill. The Lok Sabha session kicked off on a stormy note yesterday as Union Minority Affairs Minister Kiran Rijiju tabled the Waqf Amendment Bill.
Honorable Speaker, sir, I rise to move the motion for consideration of the Waqf Amendment Bill 2025 and Musalman Waqf Repeal Bill 2024.
The government introduced the bill with the stated objective of ensuring greater transparency and administrative accountability in the management of Waqf properties, while claiming that existing systems allowed for mismanagement, encroachments and lack of uniformity. Union Home Minister Amit Shah, defending the bill, stated that donations under Waqf must be made voluntarily from one's own property and not government land, and denied that the government intended to interfere in religious matters. He also dismissed opposition to the bill as politically motivated and rooted in vote bank appeasement.
यहाँ एक सदस्य ने कह दिया माइनॉरिटी इस कानून को स्वीकार नहीं करेगी। क्या धमकाना चाहते हो भाई? संसद का कानून है, सबको स्वीकार करना पड़ेगा। स्वीकार नहीं करेंगे मतलब क्या है? कैसे बोल सकते हैं कोई?
On the other hand, opposition leaders, including Congress Deputy Leader Gaurav Gogoi, Samajwadi Party MP Akhilesh Yadav, and MPs from DMK, TMC, RJD, BJD, and Shiv Sena UBT raised multiple concerns. A major issue highlighted was the lack of clause-by-clause discussion in the Joint Parliamentary Committee meeting, which was tasked with reviewing the draft legislation over a 6-month period. The bill contains several provisions that have triggered debate. Among these are clauses allowing for the appointment of non-Muslim members to state Waqf boards, granting government officials the authority to determine disputed land ownership, the removal of Waqf by user as a legal concept, and the centralization of Waqf property records through a national database. While supporters of the bill argue that reforms are necessary to unlock the economic and social potential of Waqf lands, which are estimated to span over 36 lakh acres and valued at around 1.2 lakh crore rupees, several regional parties including BRS, YSRCP, RJD and BJD expressed dissatisfaction with the current form of the bill. Opposition speakers repeatedly referred to the broader context of previous government actions such as CAA, Triple Talaq Law and Article 370 abrogation, suggesting a pattern of what they allege to be treated legislative action against minority communities. You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank Bhargava and me, Ichha Sharma. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.